Boy, that's disheartening. Not only when we learn about this planned ISIS-inspired terror attack on the New York City mayor's doorstep, but the fact that it was two teenagers, Amir Balat, a senior in high school, only 18 years old, and Ibrahim Kayumi, a 19-year-old. According to the police commissioner there, Jessica Tisch, these were not hoax devices or smoke bombs. They were improvised explosive devices. This is being investigated as an act of ISIS-inspired terrorism. And then we learned a third device was actually found in a vehicle not far from Gracie Mansion. All devices now being sent to the FBI lab in Quantico for additional testing. Also, let's bring in Justice reporter Alex Mallon, who's been listening to this as well. Alex, I was just, we have Aaron Katersky on the phone as well, so we have Alex and Aaron. Okay, great. We've got our chief investigative correspondent, Aaron Katersky, on the line with us. Also, Alex Mallon, who covers the Justice Department for us. And as this was happening and just listening to Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch, guys, just describing how big this could have been, I was texting Attorney General Mamdani, who's attending a graduation for ATF right now, and she said it's a miracle that nothing bigger happened here and that this was averted. Of course, going on to salute the great men and women of law enforcement, or putting up this fight every day to protect our country. I mean, we are definitely living in scary times, and we were concerned about this, Alex, right? About sleeper cells in the country in light of the Iran conflict and other things happening around the Middle East right now.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things I think Aaron pointed out in his question in that news conference is, we live in this environment where it's remarkable that these two teenagers from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, can just come into New York and toss these devices at a protest and a counter-protest that was taking place just outside the New York City mayor's home. And then one of the things that was revealed in that news conference, Kira, was that two of those devices, the FBI actually did a controlled demolition of them and said that it produced a significant explosion. They really wanted to underscore during this news conference that these devices were not only viable, but they could have caused, if detonated, a significant injury or death and major destructions was the words that we heard from Tisch there. And I think that, again, underscoring the statements that these individuals made to law enforcement after their arrest, where they professed allegiance to ISIS and said that they hoped that this would be something that would be bigger than the Boston bombing, and specifically singling out the 3 deaths there. They wanted there to be more than 3 deaths. Just shows, how devastating this could have been if those devices actually had detonated.
And Aaron Katersky, you were there in the room, and I'm just looking back at, we were about to even run a story about the concern of these type of sleeper cells or online violence, the mobilization of youth to carry out attacks like this. We were talking about the U.S. intercepting encrypted communications believed to be even from Iran that may serve as an operational trigger for sleeper assets here in our country and around the world. So when you listen to this and just the details, these weren't just 2 kids, carrying out a prank. This could have been huge, and it looks like they are going to be held accountable to the highest extent. Is there concern now about more of these attempts to create mass attacks, mass violence in our country? And if so, what is the commissioner saying, law enforcement saying, the FBI, even Rebecca Weiner there, the deputy commissioner for intelligence and counterterrorism, saying going forward that they're going to do?
Well, they're deployed, Kira, at sensitive locations, as they have been since the war in Iran began. It's not clear that the war in Iran had anything to do with these 2 teenagers from Bucks County coming into New York City on Saturday and allegedly hurling these improvised explosives. In fact, the target appeared to have been an anti-Muslim protest that was being staged by someone who had taken part in the January 6th riot at the Capitol. But it is still nonetheless worrying to counterterrorism officials that 2 teenagers from Bucks County can drive into Manhattan and go, as the FBI said, to the mayor's backyard and hurl these kinds of potentially viable devices. And the NYPD said these 2 did not set off the traps or trip the wires that they might have hoped, But that's where the bravery of officers came in, and they singled out 2 officers who ran toward these lit devices and ended up tackling the suspect alleged to have thrown them, Amir Balat. He and Ibrahim Qayyumi are now charged with 5 counts, including an attempt to provide support to ISIS and use of weapon of mass destruction. They made an initial appearance in court. And contrary to how things were described here at the NYPD news conference, Kira, an attorney for Amir Balat said he just turned 18. I don't believe he knows anything about what he's doing.
So, Alex, what more do we know just in light of this and just a very sensitive time in our country and abroad that law enforcement from New York across the country, will we see law enforcement getting any more support? Will we see intelligence officers, paying closer attention, trying to listen to various frequencies and radio chat? I mean, this puts everybody on alert, no doubt.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think that we've seen in the wake of those strikes on Iran and the very tense week and a half that we've had since then, law enforcement issuing various bulletins across state and local levels, trying to just urge vigilance among the American public and law enforcement to keep your eyes out to see. But then you have something like this, where it's not exactly an Iran-tied event, at least from what we know based on these charges thus far. But then that speaks to another concern among law enforcement, is that other actors, other threat actors, lone wolf attackers will seek to use this moment of tension when the eye of law enforcement may be on a different ball to try and take advantage and go to these protests, which, this was an anti-Islamic protest and then a counter-protest that was taking place outside the New York City mayor's residence, things that draw that kind of attention from corners of society which have a lot of political controversy and are racially tinged, and then bringing that in an act of destruction that would have taken place like this would obviously have further inflamed tensions across the country.
All right, Alex Mellon, Aaron Katursky, thank you both.